Uh, you referring to me?
Right. I got something you need.
You do?
Yep. And I can sell it to you real cheap.
Well, what do I need that you can sell me cheap?
This.
A bottle? Shh! You're wrong. I don't need a bottle.
I'm not selling the bottle. I'm selling what's inside the bottle.
What's inside the bottle?
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin?
Shh!
Bitcoin. Bitcoin?
Before we discuss the subject of Bitcoin as a transcendental object, I would like to share with you how it was Peter Schiff who ironically convinced me to take Bitcoin seriously. Bitcoin first appeared on my radar around 2013 when it went from under $100 to over $1,000 and then crashed down. But of course, like most people, I dismissed it. Obviously, it was going to zero. Obviously, something like Bitcoin could never work. It was just a bubble. It had just burst and that was it. However, in 2017, Bitcoin ran up from under $1,000 to $20,000. And that's when I thought, well, the bubble obviously didn't burst because it just blew past its original all-time high by 20x. That's when I decided, well, I need to look into this Bitcoin thing, even if it turns out to be nothing. Now, because I was a gold and silver bug at the time, I figured Peter Schiff would be a good person to look into and to see what he was saying about Bitcoin. I came across a video of his in which he described Bitcoin as being like air, as if it was like buying nothing. Now, right away, I recognized there was a serious problem with this argument, and that's when I decided that yes, Bitcoin is indeed something to take seriously. And the problem with his argument is this: not all objects that are real are material. What Peter Schiff does when he argues that Bitcoin is nothing, it is like buying something that is literally nothing, is that he's revealing a very specific philosophical worldview that he maintains, and that is radical materialism. The deepest reason why Peter Schiff is wrong about Bitcoin is because he does not recognize that an object does not have to be material to be real. That, in fact, transcendental objects exist in this universe that are absolutely real, even though they are not at all material. Now, in this video, I plan to argue to demonstrate how Bitcoin is a transcendental object. But before we get to that, I'm going to prove to you that transcendental objects do exist and they are real. And I'm going to do that by examining the Mandelbrot Set. The fractal imagery that you have been watching on your screen is the Mandelbrot Set. And what it is a mathematical formula that, when graphed in a certain way, can be visually represented. It was first visually depicted in, I believe it was 1978, and since computers have become exponentially more powerful since then, we have been able to depict the Mandelbrot set in increasing levels of complexity that were previously impossible to render. What is essential to understand about the Mandelbrot set is that what you are seeing is not a subjective creation of an artist. This is not in any way created by human imagination. The only thing that is subjective about what you are seeing is the colors. The actual geometry that you are seeing, the contrast between positive and negative space, the shapes, these are objective realities that were discovered. The Mandelbrot set was not invented. What you are seeing is not an invention, it is a discovery. What you are seeing is a visual representation of a transcendental object. The visual representation itself is not the object. If every video on YouTube of Mandelbrot set zooms was deleted, every piece of paper in the world depicting the Mandelbrot set was burned, and even the equation itself was forgotten by man. The Mandelbrot set, as you are seeing it, the object which is being depicted would still exist. It would still be waiting to be rediscovered by man. In other words, the Mandelbrot set is a transcendental object. It is clearly an objective reality in the same way that a number written on a chalkboard is. If you erase the number on the chalkboard, that number still continues to exist. Another way to understand how the Mandelbrot set is a transcendental object is to realize that the zoom that you are watching, the zoom into the Mandelbrot set, is real. It is, the video is not being looped. There's not a circular loop. It actually literally, there's a computer, a powerful computer that is rendering calculating the zoom into the Mandelbrot set using that equation. It is literally a glimpse into infinity. This is a visual representation of infinity that is not a construct. It is there's no tricks involved here. It is not possible for something like this to exist materially. No material can be infinite. Only a transcendental object can be infinite. And the only reason why we can't zoom in forever is because we lack the computing power. But in theory, you could zoom in to this Mandelbrot set using the equation referred to earlier forever, without ever looping back. That is because the Mandelbrot set is a transcendental object. Now, let's circle back to how all this relates to Bitcoin, and Bitcoin as a transcendental object. We've all seen depictions of Bitcoin as a literal coin, a gold coin. And I've always hated this because it suggests that Bitcoin has to have physicality in the same way that gold does to have value. And it's very clear that these depictions of Bitcoin as a coin exist to reinforce to make the connection between physical gold and the value of Bitcoin. But I think the better way of depicting Bitcoin is with the Mandelbrot Set. And if you see the title image at the beginning of this video, that is called the Buddha Brought. Basically, someone was rendering the Mandelbrot Set, and they basically, this ethereal image, this ghostly image of what looked like almost like a being seated in the lotus position, like a Buddhist monk would as they meditate. And it was very eerie because it emerged from this transcendental object known as the Mandelbrot Set. And I think that that's a better way of depicting Bitcoin. Bitcoin is indeed like this creature or being that has a metabolism, that has a heartbeat, that consumes energy, yet which is not in any way physical. It totally lacks any physicality. And that's why I chose the Buddha Brought as a visual representation of Bitcoin. Now, a key distinction between the Mandelbrot Set as a transcendental object and Bitcoin as a transcendental object is that the Mandelbrot Set depicts infinity. Literally so. You are literally zooming in to infinity. You are seeing you are glimpsing infinity. However, Bitcoin is a transcendental object that represents absolute scarcity. It represents the opposite of the Mandelbrot Set. It does not represent infinity, but scarcity, absolute scarcity, in a way that does not exist in the physical world, and indeed could not exist in the physical world, just as the Mandelbrot Set cannot exist physically. Neither can Bitcoin exist physically. If it did, it would be like gold. It would not be capable of achieving absolute scarcity. And that's why Bitcoin truly is a transcendental object. It must be. If it were not, it would not work. So this is what Peter Schiff does not understand about Bitcoin. If you don't understand how transcendental objects can exist without being physical, Bitcoin is going to be an absolute mystery. It's not going to make any sense to you. Absolute scarcity is only possible by bridging the physical world to the realm of ideas, or the transcendental, and that's what Bitcoin provides. Bitcoin provides that bridge between the two realms. It's almost as if Bitcoin provided a mechanism for monetizing the number 0. Because 0 is a representation of absolute scarcity, but it's something that can never be touched. It can never be accessed, at least until now. It is as if the absolute scarcity represented by the number 0 was, in some way, there was a bridge formed so that we could access it. Now, you may say, how does it make sense that 0 is being divided? But how does it make sense that something that's absolutely scarce is being divided? There's a paradox at play here, and yet there's something that intuitively makes sense about this analogy. And it's like G.K. Chesterton put it when he said, a paradox is truth standing on its head to gain your attention. Robert Breedlove has also mentioned how he equates the Bitcoin to the discovery of the number 0, and how you can only discover the number 0 once, and in the same way you can only discover absolute scarcity once, and that discovery, well, invention, discovery, that's another topic, but that only happened once with Bitcoin. I think what's important to take away from all this is how related Bitcoin as a transcendental object is to both the infinity represented by the Mandelbrot Set and by the absolute scarcity represented by the number 0. It's very interesting that Bitcoin can so easily be compared to these two transcendental objects. And of course, I believe there's a reason for that. It's because there is something very profound going on with Bitcoin. There is a very real existence that is not physical, but yet which is very much real as the Mandelbrot Set, as real as the number 0. And that's why I consider Bitcoin to be a transcendental object. Even though in some ways this is an analogy, because the truth is, if all the Bitcoin servers went down, all the full nodes went down, all the miners shut down, and all copies of the ledger were destroyed, then Bitcoin would indeed cease to exist. Unlike the Mandelbrot Set, unlike the number 0. And in this way, Bitcoin perhaps could be viewed as a transcendental organism that has a life, that was born and that could die, that will die, perhaps not for a very, very long time. But nonetheless, whether it is a transcendental object or organism, I think what's important is that it is real, and that it would be wrong to dismiss Bitcoin, as Peter Schiff continues to do so, just because it is not physical.